CHAMBERAS, Public Affairs Strategist New York, is with us today. This program is in English. Most of my programs are in Russian, but I feel like I have to keep my English up because times are calling for it finally. Nick, how you doing?
Good morning, Yuri. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm still pretending to be Joe Rogan, don't wearing a tie and a suit, etc.
Well, you have amazing taste. Not just for casual, but for formal wear. I know that, and you know a lot about ties, which is also pleasing. Just want to say, your non-Russian speaking viewers and listeners should also get to enjoy the program. So thank you for
Absolutely.
having myself and others on. Um, Maybe in the future you'll have more followers than Joe Rogan. You never know.
I hope so. I hope so. Everything is in my fans and God's hands, or the other way around. Nick, we have at least three good reasons to meet and discuss things cheerfully enough. One of the reasons is that your piece about the somber affair of trials in New York City, that like we didn't have enough bad reputation before, now we have this, and that the Trump trials in New York was published in Newsmax, right, on the website.
Right, yes.
And it was quite an honor when it was picked up by Donald Trump. And what was the deal? What was the article about, and what was the praise for it?
Well, I wrote about initially mentioned this when the first few indictments came down in August.
Mhm.
These are Stalinist show trials. And I talked about this specific case in Manhattan going on right now with Alvin Bragg just being an embarrassment and a disgrace from the outset. You just knew that this case just reeked. At the same time, I could not have imagined what a horrible, it was always horrible, but this is just an affront to our American judicial system. We justifiably, rightfully, and deservedly had a reputation for the best jurisprudence system in the world. We were a paradigm for the rest of the world of even-handedness, of impartiality, of fairness. In this case, it just throws everything out the window, and they're probably thinking, "Oh, this is just a one-off. This is get Trump, throw fairness, equality, and all the rules out the window, and we'll deal with it." But they're making a mockery of our judicial system. There is no case here. I mentioned that, and I don't want to make light of the brutal totalitarian regime of Joseph Stalin and the tens of millions of people he murdered. This is not a physical murder or an execution. This is a political execution. They're trying to destroy President Trump's professional and political career, his personal reputation. Their goal was to damage him so much that he was politically dead. Much like these show trials in the former Soviet Union, with Beria making up the charges, would be a pretense to murder people that they thought were enemies of the state. I wrote that Beria and Stalin would be impressed with the ingenuity and the creativity with which Bragg and these others came up with this case in Manhattan. Yes, they would be impressed with the creativity. I think they would be horrified and embarrassed with how poorly the production has gone. This case, for anyone following it, President Trump has gotten more supporters, not less supporters. No one who has followed this case, regardless of their opinion in the beginning, you may say, okay, we need to get this guy. If you're a liberal, woke, radical, progressive, you just say get Trump at all costs. That's perverse thinking, but this is America. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. No one objectively believes that the threshold of guilt beyond a reasonable doubt has been proven here. That's just preposterous. In fact, if this was a civil trial and you needed preponderance of the evidence, they haven't even reached that. I don't know. Basically, I think I was saying this maybe tongue in cheek in the beginning. I was going to say they're really not going to have any evidence whatsoever. They're just going to roll the dice and hope that they found 12 jurors
Yeah.
who hate President Trump. It seems like that's what they did. It seems like they're just hoping, you know, he's very unpopular here. Let's get him. Please vote to convict. That's all they have.
Yeah. It's amazing, uh, as they say. First of all, I don't want to give any advice to to our adversaries, to our opponents politically, and but. Uh, George Soros, he's very. Elon Musk called him a good. He has good arbitration. He said, good judgment. Right? He can foresee the results. He can give money to the right people, as we see by this whole Soros-funded machine that developed all over the world. But this time, Alvin Bragg, he was funded. He was supported. He became the DA, and now the execution is the poorest we've ever seen so far. We're going to see. And I was, I never said it in English. I said it a number of times in Russian. That this famous metaphor, which is very overused and very tiring already, about the frog that's being boiled slowly, cooked in the pot until, I mean, it's comfortable, it's nice, and then it's getting hotter and hotter until the frog is finally boiled and ready for consumption. But I'm saying they gave a frog to Democrats in New York and said, boil this frog. And they couldn't even do this with every
No,
possible, implement and law tweaking this way and that way. They still couldn't do that.
no, what's going on was shameful from the outset, disgraceful. This is just humiliating at this point. I mentioned this. I think, look, I don't know what the prosecution is going to tell the jurors in their summations and their closing argument. I have no idea. I have a suggestion for them. If they're really honest, if they want to be completely transparent and honest with the jury, they should basically say, look, we would have never, ever brought this ridiculous, silly case against any other person in the United States except for Donald Trump. We know we have no evidence. We know we have no case. We know that our witnesses have just collapsed under cross-examination. We know that we haven't even told you what crime President Trump has committed that would make this a felony. We didn't know all of this. But please believe us when we say that Donald Trump is a very bad man and you have to convict him to save America. And the oligarchs are counting on you. Thank you. That would be their most honest summation. If you look at the Stormy Daniels testimony, nothing there. She tried to embarrass President Trump and failed at that too. I think if anything, the jurors became more sympathetic with President Trump after hearing this woman's testimony. Nothing of substance was said. Nothing lending towards his guilt was indicated by her testimony. It was basically, get this bad man. She has changed her story at least 5 times. And that's why I'm saying, if you were listening to this testimony and then you were listening to some of the other witnesses who, for the prosecution, who basically said that the president was very worried about this because he didn't want his wife's feelings hurt. He didn't want his family upset. He didn't want to be embarrassed. He denies this firmly what happened, but he saw an opportunity to make this go away and he took it. That's not a crime.
Yeah, even this is not clear from what we heard from Michael Cohen, that he was all of his own doing, that he saw this as a way to grift some money. He confessed that he stole money from his boss, and he totally conceived this whole thing. Looks like, I mean, some people who want to be kind of even-handed, they say, yeah, we know Donald Trump is a man, all men do this. Don't speak for yourself, please. But it's something that he said that Donald Trump was not aware of all this, and it's not clear from this recorded conversation that Donald Trump knew what Michael Cohen was talking about in the conversation that he recorded. Not clear at all to me.
No, I mean, so let's just first mention one thing. He talked about how he knew who Trump was with when he made the phone call to confirm the deal. And then it turns out, according to text messages as evidence, that he was contacting Donald Trump's bodyguard about a teenager who was harassing him. And that's what the text messages were about. And then the call he made was approximately 90 seconds, give or take a few seconds. Do you really think on something like this? So he was texting him about the teenager harassing him. Then immediately he calls the bodyguard. So are we look, again, it's possible. We're New Yorkers, we speak fast, but are we really to believe that in, let's say the phone call was 2 minutes, which it wasn't, it was less than 2 minutes, that in a 2-minute phone call, he managed to get down all the facts about confirming this transaction, the supposed transaction, and, solving this problem with the teenager harassing him? Of course not. And that's why I'm saying no one, you have the pundits on air and legal experts, some renowned, very respected scholars. I wish someone would ask them, would they really go on the air and claim that Michael Cohen was credible with this testimony if the defendant wasn't named Donald Trump? Of course not. Absolutely not. They blew holes in the testimony of the prosecution's witness constantly. There is no reasonable doubt. I think we see that they never should have brought this case in the first place. No one would confuse Fareed Zakaria with being a raving right, extreme far right lunatic, whatever they want to say. No one would certainly confuse him with being a Republican or supporter of the president. But even he said last week, he said, folks, I'm paraphrasing here, obviously, he said, folks, let's be honest. We're not bringing this case against anybody not named Donald Trump. And that's sobering. That's frightening. That should scare us all. And I hope that the jury is impartial and weighs the evidence fairly and impartially. And if that happens, there's just no way. You don't need to be Oliver Wendell Holmes to know that if that takes place, there's no way there's a guilty verdict in this case. They have caused countless damage to the reputation of America's judiciary, which I think is one of the most amazing, marvelous aspects and features of our democracy, in that in this country, we've had a standard that whether you're poor, wealthy, in between, you will have a fair day in court. Has that happened here? Again, everyone has a right to their opinion. I think if you're following this trial and trying to keep up with the changes in the stories, the changes in their version of events, the inconsistencies, the atrocious things that these witnesses have done in other circumstances, and then we're supposed to just take their word for it and destroy this man's life. No, absolutely not. I think the American people see through this, and on the outset there were polls that only a third of voters thought that this case should have taken place. Only 22. Another survey said only 22% would expected a conviction, and then of course. On cue, the mainstream media came up with some creative polls trying to boost those numbers up in favor of prosecution and conviction. Again, if you're following this trial, it's never, there's never a comparable case in the history. I'm not going to criticize the judge in this case. And I'm not going to, apparently there was some back and forth with the final defense witness Costello. But if we look back to the John Edwards case stemming from his presidential run, and that was eventually tossed, where's this going to go? I mean, that was a clear-cut case of where donors raised money to protect John Edwards' political campaign, to give his mistress money to stay silent about the affair. That's nowhere. The fact pattern doesn't even come close to resembling what happened here. The president paid out of his personal funds, and again, it has to be linked directly to campaign activity. There's no comparison. The Edwards case didn't survive. How does this case survive? That's a question. I'm not being. It's not rhetoric. I'm curious. I'd like for someone to explain this to me. I just don't understand it. And that's why it's such a shame that we're going through this right now. And I mean, again, it's just a waste of taxpayers' money. It's a waste of our resources. And this is why people are not going to have faith in our justice system. And that's a shame because we have the absolute best justice system, the most impartial, the fairest in the world. We should encourage other countries to pattern their judicial systems after the United States, not mock and laugh and point to this trial.
Yeah,
Um,
American people are quite comfortable. I mean, we have our own deficiencies, of course, but we're comfortable within the grid that was built by previous generations, and we know kind of. I mean, there's enough ways for people to learn the limits of their uh, freedoms. Right, we have it, and the procedures, and people see a lot of television on the subject, a lot of movies, read a lot of books. Everything's out in the open. If you want to know about legal profession, if you want to know about how to present yourself in court, so you treat yourself to that, and people are just flabbergasted about this. uh, Calling it lawfare is too kind. Of course, it's absolute Stalinist attack on the liberties, on the psyche of on the American soul. And it's also, if you only take the aspect of this misapplication of gag order, that President Trump cannot speak, and he has to say pay $1,000 for every time he mentions the process. He mentions the what was the witnesses. He cannot criticize Michael Cohen. He cannot criticize Stormy Daniels, who just make millions. Literally, Michael Cohen was making millions off of this sordid adventure that he dragged the country into. It's really a disgraceful character, absolutely, for the city and for in many other ways. But he couldn't even. Someone said, "Just don't Trump, uh, Mr. President. Just bring him every week. Bring him $10,000 check and speak your heart out." But even this is not allowed. After $10,000, he was threatened to be put into jail. He cannot
right.
even do that.
And look, I think politically putting Donald Trump in prison would backfire so spectacularly. Um, and yes, the gag order is very unfair in my opinion. However, from a political strategy perspective, and I didn't predict this at first. I don't know if anyone did. I was very concerned about the impact it would have on the trial. But it's funny how we make plans and how sometimes they just don't turn out that way because I think the gag order,
Hmm.
believe it or not, has helped President Trump because it has induced people to come out who would never, ever, it would take wild horses to drag them to come out and say positive things about the President Trump or basically give their own unbiased view of the procedure in the trial and how the trial is going. And I don't think if there wasn't a gag order, I think obviously President Trump is more than capable of defending himself in this case and every other case, and would come up with very cogent language to describe what's going on. At the same time, again, you have Democrats. I think Michael Smirkanish on CNN a few weeks ago. I had to look twice. You're right, really. I had to look twice. I'm like, wait a minute, is CNN here? He's saying, who else do you do this to? Where you're 5 weeks into the trial and they don't know about the second crime they're being charged with. These are his words. They're not mine. They're not commentators or professors who are sympathetic to the president. No, this is Michael Smirkanish on CNN. This is Fareed Zakaria, both of whom have savaged President Trump's policies in the past. But this particular case, they're saying, hold on, because they recognize the danger. We don't want to turn into a country, a banana republic, where if you say the wrong thing, the regime's going to get you. And I don't like to use strong language, you know that. And I don't think this is a regime, but this case certainly indicates that, hey, go ahead, make their day, say something, do something they don't like, and they will find a crime. Like Beria
Yeah,
said.
pay attention because it looks like a duck, and the
Yeah,
rest is to follow. It does
right.
look like a duck.
And they're planning on Just to make a quick segue, there's legitimate controversy and some not so legitimate controversy over the shoot to kill order that we read about in the Florida
Mhm.
raid. I will not deign to pretend to act like I have the knowledge to weigh in authoritatively on that situation, whether this was standard operating procedure or not, or whatever. How could I possibly know, right? But let's use common sense. And we're in America. Did we really need that tactical assault team style raid? Could no one have imagined the massively terrible possible unintended consequences that could have occurred as a result of that raid? I mean, this is America. We should not be talking about things like this. This is embarrassing. Um,
Listen,
that,
remember, those people are the same people who cannot boil a frog. Those people who conducted the same raid against Roger Stone a number of years ago, and
right,
they consider it a great success. They achieved everything they wanted. They looked like total fascists. They brought CNN crew 5 o'clock in the morning accidentally by the door of Roger Stone and his wife's house, and it was, to me, it was a disgraceful episode, and a lot of people didn't know who Roger Stone is, so it kind of flew under the radar. But they thought this is what we need those people who we wanted to scare. They got scared, and so they repeated the same thing, except on a larger scale.
right. And what also happened is, yes, a lot of people got scared, but a lot of ordinary middle class, working class Americans saw this and said, if they can do this to the president of the United States, imagine everyone else. And
Yeah.
again, one of the many beautiful things about America is that we're not allowed to libel someone, thank God. We're not allowed to defame someone, thank goodness. But we have a right to expression here. We have a right to voice our opinion to anyone, anywhere, at any time, as long as it's not done in a threatening manner. That is, I mean, there's just very few countries left with that freedom. And that's one of our founding principles, that we can express ourselves, the First Amendment. And to basically say, yes, sure, but you might have a SWAT team show up at your door is scary, to put it mildly. And it's not just the raids we talked about, but you're having Americans who have been on the wrong side of an issue, who've been at a demonstration, and I'm not talking about January 6th. I'm talking about like pro-life demonstrations, and all of a sudden you have teams showing up at their door. Um, we just need an even-handedness. Look, no one is a psychic. No, hindsight is 2020. We don't all know the details of every one of these situations. But if you look specifically at this trial in Manhattan, uh, it is frightening. It is discouraging. And I think the only thing that can quickly restore our faith in our government is a swift not guilty verdict, which I doubted from the outset. I still highly, highly doubt. But again, I follow the trial. Many people follow the trial. You look at the testimonies, and I don't. I wasn't in there, obviously. I
Yeah, there
don't
are
know what.
swift ways to restore our doubt in our government at this point, but I would say they range from anatomically impossible to absolutely unspeakable. that's that's
Well,
how it is right now.
I'm
I, I
optimistic about
I'm
the jury.
looking at the front page of the New York Times right now. There's a New York Times from today, from this morning, Friday, May 24th. And what does the front page on my phone say? Donald Trump's pattern of sowing election doubt intensifies in 2024. And for the bots on YouTube, I just reiterate that this is New York Times. So who's sowing doubt uh, by this by this headline? Actually, I
These
think it's New York Times who's doing it.
Absolutely, these are psyops, and I'm glad you brought this up. And some people are not going to, may not agree with me. A lot of people have raised questions about what happened in 2020. I raised questions. I've never made any accusations, but I've raised questions. I said, look, in one instance about the suitcase. I think we talked about this with the thousands of ballots. Maybe they were valid. Okay, fine. We've talked about this. We've raised questions. The New York Times is trying to make Trump supporters take the bait, sow doubt, anxiety, basically throw off their focus. I urge people who support President Trump to stop talking about or stop focusing on the 2020 elections. Because what's going to happen is there are a lot of new voters. There are a lot of people who haven't voted in a very long time. There are people who had refused to ever vote for whatever reason, who in 2024 are primed to go out and vote for Donald Trump. And not only go out and vote for Donald Trump, but they're primed to get their neighbors, their friends, they're primed to be very active. We do not need to foment any more anxiety or uncertainty about the process. What we need to do is we need to organize, we need to raise money for grassroots efforts, for get out the vote efforts, for election integrity efforts, but we need to stay focused on 2024. 2020, in many ways, was a disaster. We could be on here for hours talking about it, obviously, but let's focus on 2024.
Yeah.
Let them
YouTube was
say,
going would censor us, and they would turn off the program. That's for sure. If we talk about it for
right. I mean,
what
let them talk about it for all I care. I'm done. I think we need to move on and focus on winning this election, because we saw what happened after the results of the 2020 election. You see what's happened to the economy. You see what's happening to us as a nation. You see what's happening to the middle class. All the progress that was achieved under 4 years of Donald Trump has been quickly reversed under this administration. It seems like they only care about the Green New Deal and making sure that biological males can play on any volleyball team in the country. And that's going to have disastrous consequences for us as a nation in the future. So let's not, even if you think, forget about what's rigged, what's not rigged. You consider yourself a Republican, a Trump supporter. You want this country to move forward positively in the future. Focus on the present, focus on the future. Stop talking about the past. Go out, get your neighbors, get your friends, whether it's social media, in person, on the telephone, via text messages. We have to be prepared. What undid us, one of our biggest weaknesses in 2020, and I understand why you had the weakness, because of the roaring economy, of world peace, of more unity in the country. I think many Republicans were way overconfident about the result, regardless of what the polls were saying. Our biggest enemy right now is certainty, exuberance, and overconfidence. We have to run this campaign from now and through the end of the election like we're 2 points behind. That's it. There is no other option. We can't pat ourselves in the back and go meme crazy, because we underestimate them at our peril. Let me tell you, the Democrats have some of the most brilliant electioneering strategists around. They have more money than we do. We're right on the issues. We're passionate, but they are trying to goad us into uncertainty, into pessimism. We've got to focus. Each rally has to be bigger than the next. We have to engage Democrats, independents. We have to worry about RFK supporters. Let's just focus. Go out. Everybody should be a mini community captain, whether it's your 3-house neighbors community captain, your block captain, your neighborhood captain. Just go out.
Make yourself one. Nobody appointed
Exactly.
you. Make yourself one.
Exactly. That's what happened with Rudy Giuliani in 1993. There were a lot of doubts about what happened in 89. And look, a lot of people could have said, oh, look, it doesn't matter what we do. I was just a kid back then, but I never saw how many people who had not been involved in political campaigns just went out there, started talking to people, started talking to their neighbors. And even though Rudy Giuliani was behind in every poll, and the Dinkins team was very confident, but they pulled it off in places where, let's just say, in precincts where 800 people usually used to vote, in Giuliani territories. All of a sudden, the results are coming in. You have 3,500 people voting. Let's stay focused.
Yeah, my friends, I want to just say here, and as I promised to myself, to keep this channel going I'm very productive. We produce a lot of hours of many hours of political, cultural, and other what I consider is religious even content. Uh, so I'm encouraging everybody to go to my website, a nice place to go to nice place. It's most of our channel is in Russian, but dashevsky.com is the website that is in the works, and you can join and become the member of the club, which is a subscription type thing, $9 a month, and 100 for a year discount. You go to Substack. Substack is the place that is kind of working with me for now, so you can subscribe, quote unquote, there and get the news. I do not cut out, I do not exclude people who do not pay. Everything is free. But if somebody considers this enterprise worthy of their time and $9 a month, please join. Please support the channel because this is how everybody survives at the time when still takes time, still takes money, and also there is a censorship of the unknown scale at this point. I can see changes in YouTube algorithm, and people are writing to me wondering how can you have like 150 likes, say, at the outset of the program, and only 70 people watching. So the algorithms are trying to read the room, so to speak, and see the subjects that are being discussed, and we expect heavy weather recently with some tornadoes in the area. So this is the prognosis for now. So that's why we have this situation with the subscription. So please, Substack, go to dashevsky.com, press the club. You go to Substack this way and you subscribe there, and you can subscribe for free, which it does not give you any benefits at all. But if you pay $9, then it becomes your support, and the first place where you see my videos with people like Nick and other people, mostly in Russian, as I said, but I will be expanding on the English speaking audience, of course, as the elections near us. So please be there, and it's much appreciated. Interesting subjects. You can always turn the subtitles and hear what we talk and read what we're talking about in English if you're interested in what MAGA Americans talk about of Russian extraction. And but believe me, we possess unique knowledge about the Stalinist process, trials, and the communism, its practical aspects, and not too many Americans know about it. So, listen, Nick, what not a lot of Russians know about is the culture of political rallies. And we had one special political rally yesterday, right in the belly of the beast, in the lion's den, when we had one a man with light hair and a pretty tall man and a red tie showing up and speaking to a crowd of very the New York Times noted, by the way, the New York Times said that the crowd was very different. It was very multiracial, very diverse. I'm talking about the rally that Donald Trump had yesterday in the South Bronx in New York City. And
Well, I was not surprised at all that there was such a crowd in the South Bronx. I think if people were not afraid of counter demonstrations, as huge as that crowd was, I think, especially in the outer boroughs, it would have been double the size if not for fear of retaliation. I think it was a marvelous spectacle, history making. And again, it just shows you the resolve of our presidential candidate. He came to the South Bronx where Republicans have never been greeted warmly. And he came and he didn't pander. He spoke to our issues. He spoke to the issues of the Bronx, of Manhattan, of Queens, of Staten Island, and Brooklyn, and New York in general. And he promised that help is on the way. And he gave details. If you look at the amazing young volunteers who made it happen with just one idea, and they didn't just offer the idea, they came, they showed up, they registered voters. That was amazing. That's what we have to do. And that's what I had in mind before I was talking about. Let's keep building on this. And I think there are serious issues in terms of the development of the local GOP parties, some of them in some of the counties, not all, or we would be doing much better, not just in the presidential races, but in state and local races. But we don't have the infrastructure yet to compete with the Democrats. But I think this was an important first step. I think it should show certain naysayers, certain pessimists. There are a few people, and I really don't want to get into the local minutia here. There are a few very influential people in New York City politics, Republicans, Republican power brokers, who basically think that the Republican Party in New York City exists for their jobs at the Board of Elections, which is ridiculous. Guys, step aside if you don't want to work. There's room for improvement. There's room for growth. We don't need to be running these. We run a lot of quality candidates, but as I've said before, we run some absolute nut jobs, whack jobs, nut cases, just for the sake of running. We don't try to raise money. We basically try to make it look good in a lot of winnable races. If I didn't really plan on talking about the local races, but look, President Trump came to the South Bronx. Tens of thousands of people showed up. And again, New Yorkers are very savvy, and it could have easily been twice that size if people weren't afraid, because they've gone to smaller protests only to be met with armed goons. To the credit of the NYPD, they did a fantastic job as always yesterday. Let's build on this though. And
good.
Whether New York is in play or not, who knows? I think, and a lot of people don't hold this view, I think if RFK wasn't in this race, and if anyone has been following my predictions in the past few years, most of which have been right, by the way, but if anybody's been listening, if most people have been listening to me, they know that I'm not this ebullient optimist. But I think if RFK was not in this race, the race would be over. There's not going to be a magical Biden economic recovery. The economy is basically great for Wall Street titans, not your average investor, even not your upper middle class investor. Inflation has eaten away at the earning capacity of most Americans. The dream of owning your own home is just a dream now. It's an unrealistic, it's a fairy tale for most. Americans are struggling. Energy costs are through the roof. We have a dangerous open border where by now there's probably 600, 700,000 felons, illegal aliens in this country. And I don't mean by felony, I don't mean that they came here without authorization. I mean, there are people here illegally who've committed serious crimes, and we don't have control of them. We don't know where most of them are. Small towns, once safe communities, have become dangerous places, and that's because of Joe Biden's policies, directly because of Joe Biden's policies. So I think if RFK wasn't in this race would be over. It would just be a matter of time. It would be the most preordained outcome since Dole Clinton in 1996. However, RFK is in the race. There's a wild card. As we've seen, Joe Biden's team will stop at absolutely nothing to win this race. Let's not forget that. Please, let's not be overconfident. Let's prepare. Let's hope for the best and prepare for the worst, because I'm telling you, the worst is coming. They will stop at nothing to hold on to their power, their control over the government. So, again, let's just build on this rally yesterday and keep it as a stepping stone. Because whether we win New York or not, and I could easily see this. Look, I could see this being a nail biter again. Where we don't know who won. Hopefully we do at the end of election night. But I could also see it being a 1984. 1980 is a much better analogy because this president has definitely been worse than Jimmy Carter on by almost every measure, practically every measure. I could see it being a nail biter. I could see it being a landslide. Let's not rest easy. Let's build on this. And New York, look, if Biden has to worry about New York in October, if he has to worry about New York State or New Jersey in October, it's over.
Yeah, that's right.
Again,
that's what Donald Trump said yesterday. He said, "Listen, if we win New York, the rest is in the bag."
The irony does not escape me that I've just spent like the last 15 minutes exhorting your viewers and listeners to not take it easy, to not be overconfident. I'm just saying, hey, if New York is in play, it's over. But yeah, if New York is in play, it's over. So let's put New York in play.
I just want to tell everybody, please avoid this very contagious Russian disease of pessimism. Russians got it from the Germans, and Germans forgot about it already. They are regular. They're back. The Weltschmerz is gone in Germany as a whole. It's just for the Bohème. The general feeling is we are here, and I'm fighting it in Russian and sometimes in English. And thank you for giving me this opportunity to do it in English, to fight this pessimism that is not how the West was won in general, not just in American
Bravo.
sense, but you talk about the ancient Greece civilization, you talk about the Roman civilization, and all the rest who followed. Not pessimism, optimism, and trust, and thrust, and energy. This is what we need today. This is how we get further in life, and there's no other way. There's no other way. Whatever people tell you, you can think, you can sit and think things over and think again and think some more and get some fresh air, come back and think all over again. No, action, 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 as some people say. You go, you know what to do. Everybody, be a captain. Talk to your friends, get some bulletins. You have a printer at home, print some forms, the forms that are online, to get people registered to vote. Just spread them around and talk to people, and nothing is bad about it. You'll be taken away from your phone for a few minutes. It's not dangerous at all. You'll get some fresh air. You meet new people. You meet old people, and you try, just don't be um, on the attack. Don't just to start a conversation, make sense of the time that people would spend with you, because all they want is to have some meaning. Of when we interact, we want to put some meaning in our conversation, right? We want it to be useful. So it's a good example, I would say, with all due modesty, that how you talk to people. You don't try to convince them right away, and you just get into their mind in a way. That's how people talk, and they start reading, and you fail once, you fail twice. People have the great American ability of communication, and we can see it in the movies. Because, in my opinion, why movies suck these days, most of them do, because the cause and effect is lost. There's no action that shows the result of it is not related to the why people started doing it. So there's a cause and effect loss. And when you talk about the crime, and we are led into some side alleys where the other things happen, but there is no direct relation showing that you do the crime, then you do the time, right? That's kind of very rough explanation, but for lack of time, we won't go into the RC aspects. We do it in Russian too. So on this program, I'm sorry. So Nick, let me ask you this. Now we know that there was a permit for 3,500 people to attend the rally in Crotona Park in the Bronx. It was filled to the capacity. 3,500 people, and then there was about 10,000 people outside, and this is preliminary, and this is by New York Times estimates, so it could be easily more than that, but there was a lot of people, and there was just 100, again by New York Times estimates, 100 protesters, and they only found one 64-year-old guy who had a Jewish first and last name, but he said they said he was black, and he said that Donald Trump has no right to be in our neighborhood. We don't like his kind. What kind of talk is this?
Yuri, are you revealing what the summation of the prosecution is going to be next week? That was a joke, everybody. That was a joke. But look, I think clearly they're panicked right now. I, I think they thought that they had such a brilliant strategy going into this in January. Um, I I've got to say, yes, he's a billionaire. He has a lot of resources and a lot of support,
Thank God.
but I don't think most of these strategists and pundits thought that he was going to withstand all of this. Um, the economy is doing so poorly. Bidenomics has been such a disaster. I almost don't blame them for basically making a strategy of let's make him crack with trial after trial after trial
Yeah.
with ridiculous accusation. Remember when he used the financial term bloodbath and they jumped on that? I thought they were, I think they were expecting him to wear down, to have some kind of breakdown. Um, and if anything, he emerges stronger after each one of these ordeals, right? And not only that, but he picks up a few points in the polling. And with each ridiculous case, there's more independents flocking to him, more Democrats, and yeah, that was basically the strategy. Wear him down by trials, call him a fascist, ridiculous, obviously, make it seem like it's us against them. Before it used to be class warfare, now I guess it's team warfare. Um, Basically, label him, dehumanize him. I think that's one of the most shameful things they've tried to do is they're trying to dehumanize a former and future president of the United States, and it's not working. So that maybe this nonsense would have worked 10 years ago about you're not one of us. Nonsense. Who is us? um, they kept talking about the top 1% in past elections.
Yeah.
Let's keep it real here. Under Biden's crony corporatist policies, yes, some wealthy individuals are affected. But by and large, the people who have been most devastated under his economy are working class families, middle class families, upper middle class families. Um, People who want to be super wealthy, who have the initiative, who work hard, and are just being crushed by these insane policies. We became energy independent, and by the few strokes of the pen, all of a sudden, people can't afford to put gas in their car. They have to choose between gas or lunch in the United States of America.
Yeah.
So they see this. They're not stupid. Like I said, I give them credit. They have some of the best campaign strategists in the world. But they're going to have to change course. This stuff is not working. Nobody believes it anymore. Everyone has a right to their opinion. Nobody believes that Joe Biden is looking out for most Americans more than Donald Trump. At this point, that's just ridiculous. And it's
Yeah,
shown.
this is not what they paid for, those strategies. They may be brilliant, but they are paid to play a certain tune, and they cannot veer from that. And I look again and again on this diagram, the skyrocketing the election doubts in 2024, Trump's pattern. And from what I know about people, I look at this and I say, okay, the faithful Democrat would look at it and say, oh yeah, we know election was honest. The elections were honest, and there's no doubt, no place for doubt. But what is the chance that people will look at it and say, listen, we hear so much about it. Let's get to it. Let's see what really happened. Maybe there is some information that made this graph possible. Why would Donald Trump, a person who's a billionaire, who's built on literally on making things happen, he keeps talking about things that do not exist? Let's dig into that, and I suspect that it will chip away a few people, a few hundreds of readership of New York Times that would go into the research, and they would at least see what we all saw. We didn't know what happened in 2020. We knew that our guy didn't win, right? So just put it roughly, but we knew there was something to look into because the nation was wanting to look into, and we were not allowed to do so, and
There,
forcefully so.
there was nothing wrong with people asking questions. Making false, libelous claims is another issue entirely. Shame on you if you are a Democrat or Republican who did that. Uh, However, looking towards 2024, let's focus on making sure that we have an honest election on both sides. Both sides should want fair and honest elections. And I think we should be able to agree to that. Let's make sure that we don't have dead voters. voting.
Yeah.
Let's make sure we don't have fraudulent ballots. There's no reason in this day and age that someone should be able to vote multiple times in multiple states, as occurs too often. And again, I think that Democrats, one of their goals is another inundation of massive paper ballots. Now, I'm not saying that these paper ballots are going to be legal or illegitimate. I think they're relying on, basically, coupled with their misinformation and fear mongering about the threat to democracy, which I'm sorry, it's absurd. I think they want to scare the daylights out of average voters, get them to mail in those ballots, uh, basically start sending those in from September, and that's part of the strategy. I don't know. I think, like I said, barring some economic miracle in the next few months. Oh, I thought it was hilarious that some of these, I don't know if you caught it, Yuri. Some of these economists sympathetic to Joe Biden were lamenting about how uninformed the American voters were about how great the economy is doing, which is just a silly elitist attitude to have. I mean, I'm sorry. Yes, Wall Street is doing well, but I also think Wall Street is doing well because they play the long game, and they're thinking that help is on the way. They're expecting a Trump win, and I think that's influencing behavior in the stock market. I could be wrong, but that's what I think is happening.
Yeah.
And but aside from, if you're making, if you have a huge Wall Street portfolio and you're doing very well, that's awesome. Now, if you're looking at Democrats, Republicans, Independents who had to endure these insane lockdowns, this pandemic fear mongering, and I don't mean the pandemic while it lasted. I mean, people in the Biden administration were trying to get these lockdown measures to stay in place until even now, if they had their way. And that's sadly the truth. Some of them would have had, we would have had lockdown measures now. I think, if barring some economic miracle, barring some miracle in Ukraine and Israel, things are not going to go well for President Biden in the upcoming election, whether you have a third candidate, a fourth viable candidate, a fifth candidate. It helps him. Again, I'm one of the few people who think that RFK actually will wind up helping Biden. I don't think it's going to make a difference in the end, but things are not looking well for his prospects. And all we have to do is stay focused, not take the bait, not bite into these conspiracy theories. Whatever happened in 2020 happened. Put that in the past. Let's make sure that the next 4 years are 4 years of prosperity and protecting the American family, which
Nick,
basically is under siege right now.
no, absolutely. Nick, last question for today. What's your on this program? What's your VP pick? Who do you think would be has a chance to become
So
the vice
real quick,
president?
there's so many outstanding prospects this time around. And since I'm from New York, I'd be remiss in not mentioning that either Elise Stefanik or Lee Zeldin would be incredible vice president choices. I think right now, one strong contender would also be Ben Carson, JD Vance, Marco Rubio, someone who hasn't been mentioned. Doug Burnham, also obviously from North Dakota. Look, I could go on and on. Someone who hasn't been mentioned, but I've heard in the background that don't sleep on this prospect, is Senator Tom Cotton.
Mhm.
I think his stock is rising. There's just so many amazing options, and forgive me, I know I've left out at least 10 in the limited time that we have, but I just want to say, do not pick a rhino. Whatever we do, let's not pick a rhino. Let's not pick a country club Republican. Let's pick someone who the base trusts, knows, and can articulate in a passionate but respectful manner, advocating for the American people.
Yeah, my only thing is just we have to have a warrior as a VP, not someone who would bring the country together or would do other things. You draw this group into our electorate or that group. I don't think it's actually a valid point in choosing a vice president. It should be someone who would do things that the president is not willing or politically disinterested in implementing, like policies, like knowing the world, knowing how to negotiate. No, not less successful than Donald John Trump would be negotiating with China, with Russia, to have the gravitas, to be a heavy in the room, and to just to be able to talk to Putin or whoever Putin sends your way, to be able to talk to Zelensky, to be able to talk to the Middle Eastern countries. Just go get to the point and ask them what's next. So we're here right now. Give them the facts, give them the situation, show them where they get their money from. So be very practical in this way. This is the person I would like to see as a vice president. I would call it a collective Mike Pompeo. I know very little about this man. I know his biography. I was talking about Vivek Ramaswamy, maybe, but there are certain things that I think he won't be able to do. So this way is right way to go, and I want President Trump's team to be the best, the greatest team of all times from the get go.
I have again, for all we know, none of the people we mentioned will be the pick. Right? How could we know? I have I have full confidence that Team Trump will come out with the best choice, an outstanding choice, and they did in 2016. Regardless of the aftermath, if you saw the debates with Kane,
Mm.
um, even the debate with Kamala Harris, I mean, you know, uh, I think that they're gonna. I think we're gonna be very happy. Again, I'm not always optimistic. I don't. You know, we've had picks in the past that we're just scratching our heads and have not worked out at all. I don't think that's going to be the case with President Trump. I think there's probably another. You know, people try to. I don't know if they're pretending, but people want to project power and influence, and they're saying it's down to these three, it's down to these five. I could be wrong. It could be down to two. I'd say right now they're probably looking at more than 10. I could be wrong. The president could come out tomorrow with a pick.
No.
Let's just have someone we know, we trust, who's reliable, whoever it is.
Nick, thank you so very much. We had Nicholas Chamberas with us, a public affairs strategist from New York. Everybody, subscribe to the stream. Even if you want to know more Russian, if you want to learn more Russians, we're very open here about our ideas, about our heritage. We mix every nationality is listening. With the former Soviet Union, Uzbeks are here, Tajiks are here, Koreans are here. Everybody, Russians are here. People from Russia is a big segment of this stream as well, I must say. People from Ukraine, Israelis, Canadians, you name it, we have them. Uh, the warmest cheer, the loudest cheer to all of you. Thank you so very much. Dashevsky.com. Go join the club, be a subscriber. And Nick, thank you very much. And we see each other
Happy
pretty
Happy
soon.
Memorial. Yes, happy Memorial Day, and thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you. Goodbye.